So, seeing any good moves lately? Welcome back to episode 7 of See Any Good Moves Lately. I am your host, Joey Overding, and today I am thrilled to be joined by the most exciting man to ever live. Some are saying it's true. I am bringing in my friend and RHEV patron, Shane. How's it going, Shane?
Hello, everyone. My name is Shane. How are you doing today, Joey?
Life treats me well. I watched my baseball team win today. Shouts out to the Cincinnati Reds. Shouts out to Hunter Green. I was doing some homework today, and I played a little bit of Blood in the Clock Tower. And that's about it. It's been a very exciting, chill Sunday for me, and I hope your Sunday has been full of great things, Shane, as well.
Yes, I'm coming off a birthday celebration, turning the big
Yes,
30. So this was the weekend to celebrate. Apologize for my
that's
appearance.
nothing to apologize for. Well, let me ask you. There's a season of Survivor going on right now, Survivor 48, and let me just ask you, Shane, what are your general thoughts on it, if anything?
I am generally liking this season. I was almost a naysayer of last season. I kind of fell off a little bit. I'm honestly liking the season a lot better. I think just the overall vibes of
Mhm.
everything that's going on more lines up with my interest of the show. I think it's like more like human nature. We get these moments with Joe and Eva, and we get these moments with Mitch, and like we get like a lot of real moments compared to I don't know a lot of what we had last season, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel
Yeah,
about that, but
no, I totally agree with that. I mean, a lot of last season sort of boiled down to like Andy and his like relationships with people and him sort of crashing out in the first episode. And that was sort of probably about the most human moment we got. Like we had part of the whole nature of the season was like Rachel and Genevieve. Genevieve especially is like, I am trying to be a game bot. I am trying not to show emotion. That was basically her character arc, was being non-emotional. And here, partially because it's people not trying to be game bots, it feels like we are getting a lot more human insight into the people playing the game. Whether it be Joe and Eva, whether it be David, whether it be Mitch, who we saw this episode, everybody's sort of letting us in a little more than I think we see a lot of the times in New Era seasons. A lot of the times, I think it boils down to tragic backstory and not really how people are feeling on the
yeah,
island. And here, I think there's a fair amount of tragic backstory, but it's not. It's making its way seamlessly onto the island, which I appreciate.
yeah. Uh, I was gonna ask, did you have any? Do you do a winner pick thing on this show where?
So I do have a winner pick. I didn't do it specifically on this show, though I do want to know who your winner pick is. My winner pick coming into the game was Joe after episode 1 because Joe Solidarity. Shouts out to people named Joe. But also, I could tell that he was going to be someone people trusted a lot, and I think he's physical enough, but also not over the top. That I think he's in a good spot. But now I definitely like Camilla. I think Camilla is probably the most likely to win at this point. I really think Camilla has played very well. So those are sort of my two, but Joe was my original pick. How about you?
So I was looking back at notes I took for episode one because I was always prepared. I was trying to take notes for episode one, and I don't do much preseason stuff, right? So like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like to
me
go in
neither.
blind.
Yeah, me as well.
And my first thing I wrote down was pizza guy winner pick, and I
Yeah.
quickly changed that to Kyle halfway throughout the episode. So
Yeah, I gotta say, Kyle's looking good. He's basically in the same position that Camilla is. He's a little more visible, probably since he won the immunity challenge last week. But Kyle is definitely, he feels a little more, even more integrated than Camilla is. So I like that pick. Yeah,
yeah, he has a strong people alliance. Then he also has his one-on-one with Camilla. I mean, he's in a great spot. Even if, I mean, I'll probably get into this later. Shaheen tries to like backstab or like betray the strong alliance. Camilla has to be in the know, and Camilla's going to tell Kyle.
yeah. Yeah.
But I'll get
No,
to that later as well.
he's very well integrated. I will say, I am still disappointed and saddened that pizza guy, that Justin went home. Um,
Me too.
not just because he had pizza on his shirt, and that was awesome, but just the nature of how he went home, and all that stuff. And now we're at the point where, like, as we saw in this episode, that original Green tribe is not in a good spot. There's exactly one person left from that tribe, and she got voted out. But played the shot in the dark, so not really. But like, it's rough, and I gotta say, if Justin was there, I think things would go different. I don't think he'd be voted out at this stage if that didn't happen to him. If he didn't lose his vote, I had faith in the pizza. I had faith in the dough.
I know. Quick aside, Boston.
Yeah,
I was at the after party after the show, and
the RHAP event, right?
yes, the RHAP event. And guess who I saw at a table not eating pizza in a pizza shirt?
Well, it
Justin.
was Justin. Wow.
I was like, what's going on? You're not even eating the pizza. I was eating the pizza. Justin was not. So I don't know.
Wait, where was the after party? Was it at his pizza place?
No, it was like a mall Marriott thing. Like it was like a shopping mall, but there was a Marriott built into the shopping mall, and there's this restaurant. Very spacious, very nice, a lot of room to breathe.
Interesting.
A lot of drinks flowing.
Yeah,
but not for me.
Well, you were there with a bunch of RHAP patrons, maybe even one or two that have been on this podcast. I want to ask you, like, what are your funnest stories that what's a story that sticks out to you if you have to pick one? I mean, well, I want to hear all about it. I'm sure the audience wants to hear all about it, but
we can talk about the episode first and get into that later if you want.
Sure, yeah.
I just wanted to throw in that Justin thing real quick, but
yeah, of course. Yeah,
we did play a Survivor card game.
Oh yeah, how was that?
I'll get into that later. That's one of my fun moments.
Okay, all right, that's a tease. I like that. I think the most important thing to be able to talk about this first episode that we watched here, we have to talk about the last episode, and we have to talk about Charity and the Mergatory and the sort of consensus boot that was her. What did you think about that episode? What did you think about that, if anything?
I didn't have any strong feelings about the last episode. I mean, I think it was like a run-of-the-mill episode. We pretty much know who's going home. How do we get there? Now, the thing that correlates that episode to this episode, was it kind of the same thing? Where we already have these two targets now that we're pretty sure that everyone wants to vote out. But is it a choice of editing for the future, or just editing to make it interesting about, like, I was going to say, why this episode happened? Like, is Shaheen going to play a more valuable role in the future? Or is that just editing to make this episode more interesting? Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting question. The entire concept of, like, consensus on Survivor, especially during the merge, it's something that's very interesting to me, because I think a lot of the time it can come down to it just comes down to the majority alliance or the majority tribe, especially in the new era, saying this person is the person none of us like need to stay in the game. Like Mariah in season 46 was like that. Like, this happens relatively often. Sifu and J Maya were that way in 45. Like, this happens. That being said, I don't know how that translates to this going forward in this game. I feel like once we get past the first, like, split tribal mergatory, we don't see a lot of consensus boots. And if it is, it's usually either because they're big threats or because no one wants to keep them in the game for other reasons, like, Venus or whoever else. But the most direct way that we can see Charity's boot affecting this episode comes from the start of this episode, which is Mitch's outlook after he basically got blindsided and feels powerless at this stage of the game. And we get a lot of Mitch this episode, which I think is pretty interesting. A lot of Mitch. What are sort of your thoughts on his state of the game and where he sits in the game?
Yeah, Joey, after seeing the intro of the episode, I was scared for my boy Mitch. I am a huge Mitch stan. I was one of the people in the theater at our RHAP live that was rooting for Mitch that whole episode. Mitch over Say for sure. Mitch's state of the game. So first off, if Mitch is such a strong threat to people, why isn't he in a strong person alliance with the other like five?
Yeah.
If he's such a physical threat, I thought they wanted physical threats at the end. Anyways, he's genuinely trying to bond with these people. His social game is pretty damn good. His comp game, he's pretty damn good at comps. But now he's being starved. He hasn't won a reward challenge in, I think, at all.
Yeah, he hasn't won at all. He made sure to mention that. Yeah.
So I mean, he lost his ally in Charity. He's kind of a lone wolf. I know we'll debate later on. Like, was it better to send out Mitch or Say? In this case, I still believe it was better to send out Say for many other reasons. But with Mitch, I think this was a pivotal vote where this could propel Mitchell to the end game based on what happens next week. Surviving this vote was crucial. Using the block vote was crucial because that gets rid of any future kind of need to get rid of Mitch.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think getting rid of advantages, especially ones that are public, is very smart. And I think it's a good move. And on the opposite end of Mitch, being blindsided is Say, who was not blindsided by getting votes, but was very surprised to get 5 of them and to be essentially 1 vote away from going home. Now, most of that was just splitting the votes in case of Charity having an idol or something like that. But Say is such an interesting character to me, and part of me is sad that she's gone in the sense that she is such a throwback to the idea of someone just being so mad that someone puts their name down. Like, they will do anything to get to ensure that person leaves the game. Like, it's a throwback to the early days of Survivor, like Flex from Survivor Africa. Like, you just don't see that as often anymore. People don't take things personally. And so it was interesting to me because Say has and had gotten votes at every single tribal council she went to, but it was usually just like 1 or 2 votes. It wasn't 5 whole votes. So she could personally be like, "Ooh, Cedric voted for me. I'm gonna go against Cedric now," or "Oh, Mary voted for me. I'm gonna go against Mary now." With the fact that it was 5 people, I was kind of interested in the idea of like, okay, how does she play this? Because she can't just single one person out, right? Because it's a whole half of the tribe that voted for her. So I thought that was really interesting going into this episode.
Yeah. Speaking of that, one of the first notes I have down is, what do you think about the strategy or the move of changing your penmanship vote per vote? Is that a good move? You like that?
I love that. I love that. I love the fact that Say voted for Cedric, the one lone vote for Cedric, purely out of spite, and she admitted it because she was only 1 vote away from going home. If like someone had flipped their vote, like Tyson did in Heroes versus Villains, just because they felt like it, like Say would be gone because she wanted to basically troll Cedric, which I love. I love the idea that she had this cooking in her brain for a while, that she intentionally like had been writing differently just so that she could throw this out there at Cedric. I love it. I will be honest, I don't think I could do that. Not because like first of all, I wouldn't think of it. But second of all, I'm just not that good at writing. I'm not a good writer, like physically with my hands. So I don't think I could do that, but I did love it.
Well, do you want to name off the different strategies of like writing you could do? Like, we got, printing, you could do for the first vote. You could do cursive for the second. Mm-hmm. You could do bubble letters for the third. But then at a certain point, where people are just like, hey, is this different handwriting every week? Just Say. So I guess at a certain point, the strategy just, it just makes you more of a target, I think.
Yeah, here's a question. Like, if you're constantly changing up your handwriting in order to fool your allies and people in the game, is that going to make you seen as less trustworthy? Like, because legitimately, like, I think that would, versus just being consistent with it. Like, some people in Survivor have like very like distinct handwriting. I remember Carson in Survivor 44 wrote with the NASA font, which is so annoying. But he did it, and I mean, he got to the end of the game, so or basically to the end of the game, anyways. So I mean, it worked for him, I guess. I guess you want to be consistent when you're handwriting on Survivor, but I don't know.
It's an interesting thing to bring up that we normally don't see. And credit to this episode, more of a funny vibe episode than it was, strategic. Which,
For sure.
hey,
Yeah.
I'm a vibe blow the clock tower guy. So
Yeah. I do want to talk about again, say actually voting for Cedric because this is an interesting idea that sends Cedric sort of into a spiral of who voted for me, who would do this, and for some reason I don't. Cedric, what an anomaly. For some reason, he doesn't really think that it's Say. He's just kind of confused by the whole thing, but like, who else would do it? You know
yeah,
what I mean?
it kind of leads me to believe that Cedric wasn't fully in the game. Like I love Cedric, seems like a funny guy, but I don't think strategy wise was fully there the whole time.
I mean, certainly Cedric didn't have consistency. He was
Mhm.
all over the place in terms of what he wanted to do, when he wanted to do it, and who he felt like working with at any given moment. I do get the sense that Cedric was just like not in it at some point, or he was trying to be in it, but he just had no idea how to go about it. Like he was trying to be, say, surgical with his approach to the game, but just didn't know how to do it.
Exactly. That's why at the end of the day, I know skipping ahead, but a Cedric exit here, I'm not mad about it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the next day because those are the
Yep.
things that happen in the night. But the next day dawns, and Mitch decides after his little, blind set that he is going to try hard to bond with the people around him and try to integrate himself socially at this stage in the game. Which I think is always interesting. He goes to Shaheen, he goes to Joe, and says, I want to work with you, blah blah blah. But at some point, it's like Mitch is already seen as a target at this point, and he's already not integrated with the rest of the tribe. I have to wonder like how easy it actually is to integrate yourself at that point. Because I feel like either way, you're still on the bottom, whether you're integrated or not. You know what I mean?
Well, I feel like you have to integrate yourself in the way that you integrate yourself into combining your strategies together. Like if you
Yeah.
don't have, like you could have all the personal time, like share personal stories, but if you didn't bond earlier that way, and they already have stronger bonds and personal connections, you have to convince them with a certain amount of strategy that you have that it benefits them, and that's how you kind of work your way in at this point. I mean, if you already didn't make those like bonds in the way of personal friendships, then I mean, you just got to make sure that your strategies can work together,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I also would like to mention the way that Mitch tries to integrate himself is by telling his big survivor story of quitting his career path to take a pay cut, become a school coach, and help people out with his story. And it's like that is something that if I was talking to Mitch on the street, I would be like, oh, that's a really cool story. I would like to know more about you. Blah 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 blah. In Survivor, that is not a good thing to tell people, and it doesn't make Mitch any less of a threat. Because Mitch is well liked and he's physical, but like he also has a story. He has maybe one of the bigger, best stories that you could really put on a resume of anybody still in the game. So, you know, using that as an incentive to get people to want to work with you socially is something that I guess you got to do. It's better to do it than to not do it, but still not a great spot for Mitch by doing that, in my personal opinion.
No, I fully agree. And at a certain point, you know, uh, you gotta use what you can. I mean, he just lost Charity, his main ally in the game. When you're on the outs, when you're down of like what 3 people in the outs, what it was considered said, saying Mitch, they're the ones on the outs. They're the ones going around talking today. Um, you gotta use what you can, but also just for the future, I don't want Survivor turning into just, out of the game kind of stories being the impact of what helps people win the game. I mean, they're good
Sure.
stories, they're good fuel that you should just use to build personal bonds.
Yeah, I mean, here's my honest thought. I think for the most part in Survivor history, a sob story or an inspirational story is not the difference between winning the game and losing the game. I
Mhm.
think there are instances where it definitely helps a lot. I think Jeremy in Second Chances, using the story of his wife and her being pregnant, was really, really powerful. Adams sharing the story about his mother, dying just right before it came out was very impactful. But here's the thing: those two were probably going to win their seasons regardless, and they
Mhm.
both won unanimously. I don't think it really changed that much. Maybe it swapped a vote or two at most, but I don't really think it changed between who won and who lost. Because if Survivor was, say, a contest of who has the best story, then Dreams would be the winner of Survivor Fiji instead of Earl. You know what I mean? Like things would be different. Like even going back to season one, would you rather vote for the well off corporate guy Rich or the struggling river guide Kelly? Like you would probably rather vote for the young woman in that instance, but no, that's not what Survivor's about. I don't think that's ever really been what it's about, is except for maybe the very early seasons.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
this is a good thing to bring up because I think it's impacted a lot of the at least seasons lately. But I mean, Mitch is a personal favorite of mine, and I was hopeful that Mitch was not going to go the whole episode. I
yeah.
was sitting in the theater in anticipation, hoping Say goes home.
Yeah, no, there are certain things in Survivor that like people view as being threatening and like a true threat to your game, such as a good story or a good, I should say, life story, not even a game story, a
Yeah.
life story, and also physical threatness. Like people are really scared about physical threats, and I understand why in the sense that they can take a spot away from you in Final Tribal Council, but like let's be real. Someone like David, he's, a good player. He's fun to watch. He's very physical and, he can win a lot of challenges. But he is not more threatening at a final tribal council than someone like a Camilla or a Kyle or someone like that. Like, he's not as likely to win as those two, in my opinion. But he's still being regaled as a bigger threat than either of them, I think, at this stage in the game. Um, but yeah, those two things combined, I think, just like Mitch is sort of seen as a big threat right now, and partially, I think I understand why. But at the end of the day, I don't think if Mitch is sitting at Final Tribal Council, he's an automatic winner. You know what I mean? And that's sort of how they're treating him.
No, I fully agree with you, but you don't think David's capable of it with his little poses like this on the challenge thing?
Here's the thing. I like David. I think he's a fun player and he brings a lot to the season. Um, I will say this. I don't see him winning because what's
Mm-mm.
he going to do when he gets to final tribal council? Is he going to say I was physical and I played a game that was honest with honesty and integrity? And you should also vote for me because if you don't vote for me, my girlfriend will literally break up with me. Like that's I if I was on the jury, I would probably not vote for that unless there was nobody else sitting next to him. But I mean, let's look at the current state of the game right now. Like now that Say and Cedric are gone, like there's not really any like quote unquote goats left in the game. You know what I mean? Mostly everybody's a good player. I would say that like the closest is like Chrissy, who sort of had her first like episode where she was in the game this episode. And Mary, and I think Mary's the closest thing to a goat because she got voted out. She's only here because of the shot in the dark. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would not vote for Mary to win in basically any circumstance if I was on the jury, personally speaking. But yeah, so that's to say I don't know who David would win against if he just continues doing whatever he's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not to jump ahead real quick, but how do you feel about honesty, integrity? When people talk about that in the show, because literally everyone lied that day to each other. Like everyone lied to
Yeah.
somebody. Nobody has honesty and integrity.
Oh, it's an interesting question because you have to realize this about me, Shane. My favorite contestant of all time, my favorite Survivor contestant to watch is Benjamin Coach Wade. Um, the practitioner of the honesty integrity strategy.
Mm.
I think it is twofold. I think preaching honesty and integrity is not a terrible move in the sense that if nothing else, it will make people think you're stupid because it is ridiculous. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
also at the same time, you have to be able to, if you get to the end of the game, you have to be able to say, yeah, I do not actually believe any of that stuff. I was playing it up, which I don't think David is playing it up. I think he truly honestly believes that, this is the way that people should win the game. But honesty and integrity winners, they don't exist. Not really. Not in
Gabler?
modern Survivor. No, not Gabler. No. I would say the closest new era version to an honesty integrity winner is Erica, actually, in 41, because she was pretty openly loyal to Heather throughout the entire game. And I don't know, she didn't do anything too blindsidey. Is kind
No.
of this is kind of the nature of the season. Um, the most honor integrity winner is like Ethan. You have to go back to season 3 for that. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really happen. Um, because you're right. Like it's not something that you can do. It's hard to be able to say, Shane is looking pretty rough for you every single episode and not expect to get blindsided at some point or not expect to be not well respected. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just want to bring up the point that everybody's lying. Everybody lied that during that tribal anyway. It's like you're currently lying. And it's just like a weird point to bring up because you're already lying. There's already no honesty and integrity.
Yeah, it's not like here's the thing. Like you can say, "Oh, well, I at least I didn't, say to I don't know, Charity that she's safe or something like that." But like the very act of not saying to someone that, "Oh yeah, you're going home," is in itself duplicitous. You know what I mean? Because like you're actively not telling them the truth, and that's not honesty. That's not integrity. That's oh, I'm intentionally blurring the line of what my definition of honor and integrity is by not saying anything to you in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
And those people at the end, I would never vote for them if they're like lying and stuff. And they're like, I'm honest and integrity. I'm full of honest and integrity. Like, no, get out
yeah,
of here. I'm not voting for you.
I mean, that's, in my opinion, probably most of the reason why Coach lost South Pacific, like, is the fact that he wasn't able to tell the truth and say that yeah, I was playing an honest and duplicitous game, whether that's because he like truly believed that he was playing the most honorary game of Survivor ever or just because his own ego or whatever. That's an interesting conversation. That's a conversation for another day. But someone like David, I think his best shot in the game is being in that position where he has some outside chance to win but can't get past the honor and integrity of it all. You know what I mean? The same could be true of Joe and Eva as well, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now I could see a world where David is in the final 3 and then just losing based off of going off on that train.
yeah. I
Like,
mean,
oh, I played with honest and integrity. And people are like,
absolutely. And I think here's the thing too is like David is obviously very good physically. I don't know if anybody takes him seriously strategically. I think he's the person who says, "Hey, we should all do this together and you should listen to me." But I don't think Kyle and Camilla and Shaheen are being like, "Man, David is really thinking about this game hard. He really knows what's up." I think they're thinking, "Wow, David seems like a good shield for me right now." You know what I mean?
I think that's exactly it. I mean, it's what Kyle and Camilla are thinking. They're like, hey, let's trick this guy and then get rid of the Shaheen because he can't think strategically. They're very well aware of that.
Yeah.
Like they will somehow manipulate David into just doing their bidding, and that's why they want to keep him around for that, and then be great shield,
Yeah.
Captain America himself.
Mhm. I did want to talk about one other thing with David, and that is his influence. I wanted to talk about his obsession with milk and how it's translated into the Merge tribe name. The merge tribe name is Niu Ne. I probably pronounced that wrong. I do not speak Mandarin, but it is a Chinese phrase for milk. Um, and it's just, it's not just David, right? It's him and Joe. They're both milk men. They're both milk guys, always drinking gallons of milk. Shane, what are your thoughts on milk?
Huge supporter of milk. I haven't had it in years, but the milkman cometh.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so in your world, do you think the good move is to be like David and drink specifically whole milk? Or do you want to be like Joe? And do we know what kind of milk Joe drinks? Because I don't think it was ever said, but we heard explicitly David drinks only whole milk, none of that 2% bull crap.
I Here's the thing, Shane. I have never cared about milk in my life. Really. I mean,
Ooh,
I've drunk it. I drink it. I once in a while, not often at all. Like you, I probably haven't had it in probably a year or two. So I don't know. Honestly, if you gave me a whole milk versus 2% milk or whatever, and you said, Joey, drink this and spot the difference, I would have no idea. It's all milk to me. I don't
I
know.
think I could.
I, I don't know. I could tell you the difference between chocolate and normal milk. I could tell you the difference between almond milk, probably, maybe stuff like that.
Goat milk.
No idea between 2% versus whole milk. It's just milk to me.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, not to get too far away from the point of this
no, this is fun.
podcast,
Go
but
go
I
ahead.
feel like whole milk is like the regular like Pepsi of it all. I hate
Okay.
Pepsi. I don't know why I have this can. While 2% is like that diet Pepsi.
Okay.
It's kind of the good way
Well,
of thinking about it. Like you could taste the
well,
difference there, I think. But they
can
were
you?
selling $3 milks at the RHAP theater show in Celebration.
Well, that's a good bit.
I don't know if they
Um,
sold any. I don't know who's drinking milk at a theater
yeah,
or
that's I
Survivor.
alcoholic milk is like some
White
I don't know,
Russians.
Clockwork Orange stuff. It's not real life. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But
I don't know if I can taste the difference between regular soda and diet soda. Honestly, like I don't know if I could do that. No,
what?
no, I don't think so. Like if you gave me a diet Coke and a normal Coke, like maybe normal Coke tastes like a little more sugary, maybe, but I don't really know.
Joey, that's like a
Um,
superpower.
well, maybe you possess that superpower and I don't. I guess. Um,
No, diet stuff tastes awful. I can't.
I look. I'm not a soda drinker in general. For the most part, I stick to water, and if I want something carbonated, I drink sparkling water. So I am not the person. I'm not a master taste tester. I'm not that.
We're
Um,
getting to the real nitty gritty of your life, Joey, and that's what we want here. We want
I
to discover some lore and talk about
I'm all right with
Survivor.
revealing this. This is not a deep secret in my life. I'm okay to admit this to the public. Um,
So brave.
yeah, I'll say it. Like, give me like a Pepsi Max versus a Pepsi Zero versus a Diet Pepsi versus a normal Pepsi. I don't know the difference. It's all got that Pepsi flavor to me, I guess.
Pepsi
Um,
flavor.
it's all the same to me.
But
Um, yeah.
that correlates to like, so do we think that Joe probably drinks like almond milk and that's why he couldn't beat David who drinks whole milk and gets all the full fat from it? And so his muscles are more complete.
Here's the thing. Joe isn't trying to build necessarily the biggest muscles that he can. He's probably trying to stay ripped because he's a fire captain. But David's whole thing is he's a stunt performer, so he's probably trying to look as large as possible. So he probably has strategy. He's always had strategy in the type of milk he drinks. I don't believe that's true of Joe. I think he just likes milk a lot. Um, so it's much to consider, really. Um, but let's get into this immunity challenge because it is something that we see quite a bit, which is two teams are formed between the merge tribe. Each has 6 members on it, and the first tribe to have everybody completely drop out is the first one that goes to tribal council. and everybody, each tribe has one person who will win individual immunity. And this is also a real classic challenge where we have you sit, you got cranks, and it's got body weight, and if you can't hold it, then it will drop and you will perish. Um, I would be terrible at this challenge. I don't know about you, but this is not made for me.
Well, I remember from the RHAP live show, this is the challenge that our dear friend Dwight went out first on. So,
Yes.
uh, I guess this challenge tends to favor like bigger muscles and all that biceps, like pure biceps. But also, Joey, do you think it's a good strategy to even try to wind it back up while you're doing it, or you're exerting unnecessary energy? You commonly see people like Kyle and Mitch
Yeah.
try to rewind it. Is that worth it?
I think you're onto something. I think if you can do that, like you gotta be strong. I mean that goes without saying, right? But you gotta be able to withstand the pain of it all. Like it does exert unnecessary pressure, and I feel like a lot of the times when people try to do that, it only makes it worse. Um, I mean, if I were doing this, I mean, I would probably try and then I'd probably fail. And then I'd be like, well, okay, then I'll just drop out because I want my hands to still work.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
And your calluses are still intact.
yeah. I mean, I don't have any calluses on my hands, like in
Are they
general.
warts?
I'm not, I don't have any warts like Kyle. No. My hands are exceptional.
And I'll believe you.
But yeah, I don't know. I think this challenge would be painful and I wouldn't like it. And I probably like Dwight would be among the first to drop out, if not the first. So
15 seconds for Cedric.
yeah. I mean, Cedric has to have his hands, working. He's a surgeon, right? So I mean, it probably would be bad if he went back to the operation room and it was like, yeah, I cut my hands open on Survivor. Uh and then he goes reaches up someone's colon. Like that's probably rather unhealthy, I would imagine. So yeah. Um anyways. Yeah, this challenge is interesting. I mean, we got two teams, and these teams are pretty. I would say not very even. I mean, they're kind of even, but I don't know. On one side, you have Star, Chrissy, Eva, Joe, Mitch, and Say, and on the other side, you have David, Mary, Kyle, Camilla, Shaeen, and Cedric. And the reason why I say that these don't feel necessarily even is Orange has like mostly strong people. Like, say it hasn't been great in challenges, but like Chrissy is like a firefighter. Star's strong. Eva, Joe, and Mitch have all proven to be very strong. And on the other side, it's basically just David, who is very very strong, of course,
Mhm.
and Kyle, who's like I don't know, he's an attorney. Like he's strong, but he's an attorney. You know what I mean? Um, so I felt like going into this, it was pretty uneven, but I mean, David proved that, having big muscles and doing this type of thing for a living probably helps you out on Survivor. So yeah.
Yeah, with
Um,
this, I was gonna say with
no,
this challenge real quick. This is where I think the real comedy of the episode kind of kicked in, and where
yeah,
you kind of got the sense it's more of a vibe than strategy episode. I mean, we could talk about stuff like Jeff Probst is going right into a commercial.
yeah, yeah.
Into it.
That was fun. I enjoyed that. Here's the thing, like one of the many reasons I love Survivor, and one of the many reasons that I like talking about it so much, is just that the editing is so good. And I think this was an episode where the editing really, really shined through because you had Kyle doing the apply to be on Survivor thing, or at least giving Jeff the leeway to do it, and then you had Shaeen doing the challenge music, and it actually making its way into the soundtrack. Like that's so fun.
Joey, you want to give your best Survivor music?
Man, my whole life's been leading up to this. We'll see. Oh, no, that's like the guy from Disturbed. That's not right. That's me doing. Yeah,
Challenge: try to do Survivor music without sounding like the lead singer of Disturbed and Down with
yeah.
the Sickness.
Yeah, I just did Down with the Sickness. I didn't do Survivor music at all. But maybe, I've learned that I now have a, new possible career as a metal singer. So, that's good for me.
I'm trying
I
to
could
think.
look like the guy from Disturbed too. I could get my head shaved and I could get like a little goatee and like have it. I don't know. If you've seen the guy from Disturbed, you know what I'm talking about. He's
Yeah,
looks wild. I think I could pull off that look. What do you think? What do you think? How would I look with a shaved head? You think I'd look good?
I think it would go great, and I think your Uwaka would, would go good on stage.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm not a musician. I can't claim to be. Um, but yeah, no, you're right. This is a very fun challenge. And most of the time when you're doing this challenge, like this is one that's popped up a few times throughout Survivor history. It's a lot of grueling, like pain, ow, that hurts on account of the pain, that sort of thing. Here it's just like people are just like having fun. Eva and Joe, and Kyle and David are going at it, and David just is like, it literally looks like it's the easiest thing in the world for him. Like it's absolutely insane. It's pretty easy for Joe too. Um, it's yeah, I don't get it. Like I guess if you're a stunt performer, which is not a profession I've personally been in, but if you're a stunt performer, I guess you just have to like have really good grip strength. I don't know why necessarily, but I mean, yeah,
A lot of it's to do with climbing as well, like grip strength for climbing and stuff like that. But
sure.
I was also going to point out, how they called it, like like The Rock versus Captain America, right?
Hmm.
But then also David, before saying that, saying, "I could do this all day," quote for quote, a line from Steve Rogers, Captain America.
Really,
Yeah,
wow.
that's a very famous one, and I believe in The Winter Soldier, where he just says, "I could do this all day." Was it with Civil
I
War? Oh my god, I'm forgetting. It's been so long. Cut that out. Actually, I don't know
um,
which one it actually was now. But he
I
literally says, "I could do this all day."
well,
He does in the Avengers as well. Yeah.
I, a lot to think about. Who knows? I'm sure somebody will let us know. Um, yeah, I think David. Here's the thing: he plays into it. Like it's interesting because most physical threats, people who are physical, are trying to downplay their own, physicalness. Like that's how it's worked for winners. Like in Blood versus Water, Tyson played up his shoulder injuries so he wouldn't be seen as a physical threat. And meanwhile, here's David who's just leaning into it. Like I'm the most powerful man on earth. Can't do anything to me. You may as well give up now. There's no chance you're gonna win. Um, which is interesting. It's almost like it makes him such a big target that he doesn't have a target anymore because he really hasn't been targeted at all this game so far. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
that is true. Like David, why isn't he even just in the conversation every week? Because of but he's such a physical threat. He's a
Mhm.
big guy. He looks intimidating in these challenges. Why isn't he even talked about yet? Or is that
Yeah.
just like next week? Maybe kind of this. Maybe will start happening. I'm not quite sure.
I imagine it's the sort of thing that'll start happening next week. Part of it is also just like he didn't have to go to tribal council at all during the pre-merge. So the one episode we had before this was the mergatory episode where he was not immune. And David, if nothing else, from his time on Siva, was in the center of every conversation. He was the guy because he was so physical and he was obviously not going to go home during the pre-merge. That I imagine it's a little tougher to get the votes on him than it would be someone like Cedric or Say who has less connections, or someone like Chrissy or not Chrissy, Charity who's already a target. Um, but I do think it's only a matter of time before people, if nothing else, start saying, "Well, David's pretty good in these challenges, huh?" Um, but I don't know if that by itself will be enough to actually get him eliminated, say next week.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my thought. Either way, this is honestly a very fun challenge. I enjoyed it a lot. It's both good editing wise, but also good tension. Even Joe are going at it together on one side. Kyle, well, he drops at some point, but it's basically them against David, and David literally doesn't even look like he breaks a sweat. Um, and yeah, Joe ends up winning. On the orange side, though drops before David, who wins it for the purple side and wins individual immunity. And yeah, at this point, we get to something that I think is interesting, which is the Orange tribe, whoever gets eliminated from them doesn't make the jury, which I think completely changes the way you go about the vote here than it does for Purple. What do you think about that?
This is a hot topic of debate. This double tribal, where one doesn't make the jury, the other is basically the mayor of Ponderosa.
Mm-hmm.
Very adamant during my experience at the theater, the live show for RHAP. Not well liked, especially by most of the alumni.
That's interesting.
Survivor.
Yeah.
Speak on that. Yeah. They. I'd say it just like it just ruins someone's. It just doesn't make sense to them. It ruins someone's dreams, and like it happens like midway through. But also, I kind of want to maybe add a counterpoint to it a little way. Is that it raises the stakes for an episode like this?
Yeah,
it raises it in a dramatic way. I mean, we're obviously just viewers of the show. We're also hardcore fans, but the average fan needs something to have stakes, and I found myself emotionally, rooting for Mitchell to make the jury because I'd rather have Mitchell jury. I like to have Mitchell in the jury, so I wanted my own stakes have Mitchell survive the vote over Say.
Yeah,
and we can get into that when the vote happens of what is it better to get rid of Mitch or Say, but we can get into that later. But for the purpose of this question, it just adds some stakes that make it a little interesting. And I know it's not well liked. I don't know your sentiment on it.
No, I agree with you in this sense. I am not necessarily a fan of the split tribal council. I think it is bad in a few different ways. I think it is stagnant. I think a lot of the same individuals go home. It's now been 9 out of 10 people who've gone home who were Black. Like that is a very distressing number. Things like that. But I do think the one positive about it is the fact that only one person makes the jury, because it makes this challenge, it makes the stakes so much higher, and it gives more intrigue for the audience. Like if it was just both people make the jury or neither people make the jury, then what would be the incentive for a split tribal council at all? There would be none. It would just be a gimmick for the sake of being a gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
The one person makes the jury and one person doesn't, gives stakes to it, which I like. I think that's good, and it changes the way people want to go about the voting process, as I think we saw in this episode. So yeah, I kind of like that part of it. I'm a little surprised that the alumni seem to universally dislike it, but I also understand there's a difference between watching it on TV and actually experiencing it. But I think that's kind of the point. I don't think the alumni are supposed to like it. I think it's supposed to be kind of frustrating.
Evie did not like it at all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they were on the other end. They did make the jury, but Naseer. Well, no, actually, Naseer and Evie both made the jury in 41. But I'm sure they would be frustrated in the world where people they know afterwards, who also had to deal with the split tribal gimmick, did not make the jury, which happened, which continues to happen. So that's understandable, I guess. But I think that's probably more them disliking the split tribal council in general, because that's how they got voted out.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my guess. So yeah,
interesting.
One more thing to talk about before we get to the actual voting strategies here, and that is the reward. The reward is just something so simple. It feels like it comes in every Survivor season, and that is just winning peanut butter and jelly. And I've said in the past on this podcast that if I had one food that I would really want when I was on the island, I would really want a sandwich. I don't know if I want a peanut butter and jelly though, but I guess it probably reinvigorates you, right? I don't know.
Get protein in there.
It's also part of the reason I think that they did this is because they are really checking the boxes of trying to have every single food that pairs well with milk, They just want more and more excuses to put milk in the show. They want this to be Survivor 48 Island of the Milk. That's what they want the name of this season to be, because it's crazy.
Joey,
It's
do you
wild.
think that Survivor is in the pockets of Big Milk?
I was saying, okay, no, I said this when I was watching the episode. I was like, this is the closest thing we have nowadays to a Got Milk campaign. Like legitimately, like how you're not hearing otherwise nowadays about milk. You're not getting milk advertised to you on a daily basis. Like, it's just not happening anymore. Back in the Got Milk days, like when I was in school, which I guess wasn't that long ago, but like they had big Got Milk posters everywhere you go. That you would see celebrities with the mustaches or whatever. Like, it was just part of life. And now milk is dormant. It's a bad time to be a milk lover, but this is the closest thing that we have to those campaigns today, is an entire season of television which tries to pretend it's about winning $1 million, but it's really just about milk. it's it's subliminal messaging. It's either very explicit with David talking about how much he loves milk, or very, subdued with using a Chinese expression for milk as one of the tribe names. Like, this is a conspiracy, and I think we need to look into it.
I mean, I that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I think it's confirmed. Milk is on the up. Buy stocks and milk. It's on the up.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good time to love milk, I suppose. But anyways, I just thought it was ridiculous because, like, at this point, what other foods even go well with milk that they could give as a reward? Like, they could do an
Cookies,
evening of
eggs.
desserts,
Oh,
cookies and stuff like that. But like beyond that, like, what other foods am I eating in my day to day life that I'm like, what would go really well with this? Milk.
cinnamon toast crunch challenge.
I imagine Jeff going and being like, "Your reward is a banquet of cereal,
I
cinnamon toast crunch, Captain
I would love that.
Crunch, Chicks." You know, I
Chex. You think Chex is making it to that cereal
added
table?
Checks to reinvigorate you for the rest of this game, high in protein and other important nutrients for a good, well balanced breakfast.
Yeah. Give me a Mount Rushmore for cereal reward challenge of CT Crunch. Give me Reese Puffs. Give me Fruity Pebbles. And give me Frosted Flakes.
Those are some good shouts. I definitely go cinnamon toast crunch. I would go fruity pebbles. Um, Man, what else? I'm not, like I said, I'm not a milk consumer too often, so I don't have too much cereal in my day to day life. But those two are definitely there. Um, I like what is it, Cocoa Crisp? I like a Cocoa Crisp. Um, and I'll go Lucky Charms just to say I do.
Ah,
Um, I mean, it's only about 20% of the cereal is exciting, but that 20% is pretty exciting. So,
yeah.
uh, shouts out Lucky Charms. Um, yeah. Uh, Actually, I had Lucky Charms recently. I didn't have it with milk, but I just had the cereal. Those marshmallows are bad. They're not good.
Well,
Um,
when
they
you're
they're
like
like
4 and like 8, they taste
they're
pretty good.
they're like stale and tough. I did not remember that. I thought they were way more like soft. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but Joey, the key ingredient you're missing here is the milk to make them soft. You need the
I
milk
know.
for the Lucky Charms to be good.
I
Even
know.
Joe would tell you that. David would tell you that. Lucky Charms
But
without milk is just
it's like
flat.
astronaut marshmallows though. It's like they're so dry. I know that they need the milk, but I was surprised, is what I'm saying, by that revelation when I had Lucky Charms somewhat recently. Um, but yeah. Uh, Anyways, David also breaks the record for the longest time doing this challenge on this episode, and Jeff makes a big deal about that, saying, you broke a record on Survivor. But like, I love statistics. I'm a nerd. You may not have realized this, but I enjoy that type of thing theoretically, but it's also so skewed because in order to break the record, you have to have somebody else also break the record. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's pretty imperfect. Because Joe also broke the record, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean the record was held by Gabler.
yeah, yeah.
So, huh?
So yeah. That was just a small thing though. Anyways, let's get to this vote. Let's get to the thing. Let's
Mhm.
start with Orange since they are the first one. There's basically only two people on the block here, which is Mitch and it is Say. Um, and Mitch is sort of being targeted because, well, he was an ally of Charity who just went home last episode, and Mitch is a big threat, and he could be very dangerous and he could win challenges. And Say is basically being targeted because she is um, annoying to some people and is all over the place. Two very different sides of the coin. I know that you are a fan of Mitch, but like if you were on the beach here, like which way would you go? Would you rather get rid of a threat like Mitch, or would you rather get rid of someone like Say, especially when you know they're not going to be on the jury?
See, I think the debate even is like it's how they even mentioned it multiple times. It's how do we want to build this jury? Who do we want on this jury? What kind of people do we want on this jury?
Yeah,
I would more so like someone who I know is gonna, you know, not be petty in a way to change their penmanship to just make someone doubt someone about their vote, like Say did. Uh, but Mitch is more of staying true to themselves, probably voting for the best game at the end, where
yeah,
you don't know where Say could naturally lie. I mean, Say, I'm not talking anything bad about Say, but Say has been proven to be chaotic. Nobody really trusts Say.
hmm
And they talked about this at the live show. It's like we see snippets of these people, and like a lot of people could root for Say, and Say is like very entertaining, but we see snippets. They live with those people all day long, and then sometimes it can become so graining. When someone is so hard to live with on the
yeah,
beach, that I think this was always going to be Say going out here. We even
yeah.
hear Mary say in the other tribe, Say's gone. Like it's already a done fact between the
hmm
whole cast.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. In fact, I agreed with you so much. I agreed with you even last week. When I was talking to Sarah in the last episode, we were doing predictions for who we thought would be going home because it was sort of known who was going to be on what side. And I said, if Orange goes to Tribal Council first, then I think Say's going home. If they go second, I think it's going to be Mitch because if they have an opportunity to keep Say off the jury, I think they're going to take it. But if Say is already there and they can't do anything about that, then I think it's more likely she'll either be dragged to the end or closer to the end because there's no way she's going to win. Um, I do want to say just to brag a little. I called it on both ends. I also said I thought Cedric was going to go home on the purple tribe or purple side. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself today. So yeah. Um, but anyways, no, I think that's to say that you're right. I think Say was always the main vote here. I mean, I just don't think there's a lot of incentive to get rid of Mitch right now. I mean, you're going into what the final 10 here, or maybe 11, 10, final 10. And Mitch is like such a visible threat, but he also doesn't really have any allies anymore. Like maybe he has Chrissy at most, but like he is seen as a physical threat. He's seen as a social threat. He's seen as a threat who has a good story at Final Tribal Council. Like, quite honestly, I don't think there's any way that he sniffs the end unless he like really, really gets overshadowed by everybody else, which I think is possible for the record. But I think just based on the way he's being perceived, I think eventually he can just be a unanimous boot, if not soon. But yeah.
So the way I think this episode is a good building block moving forward is that we got rid of two people that could potentially be dragged to the end.
hmm
We have a
I agree.
whole lot of more so game players left that have a better chance at winning than being dragged to the end.
hmm
I mean, Cedric wasn't making any moves per se that was necessarily great, flip flopping everywhere. Um, Say was uh, Say's great, but Say was not. It was rubbing a lot of people the wrong way.
hmm
So
Yeah.
this basically opens up maybe the world where we see in the editing. We haven't really talked about that much, but Shaheen becoming a more power player in the middle position moving forward. Maybe this could lead to Kyle's downfall. If Kyle did not take the shot here, is this maybe what this editing is kind of saying?
Yeah. Yeah, moving to Purple, Shine did have a very interesting episode because he even had a conversation with Say at the beginning of the episode that we didn't talk about, where he was talking about like, I understand the way to where to play with Say now is to be direct with her, which nobody else is doing. Which, with the context of the rest of the episode and Say going home, doesn't really make sense as a confessional unless Shaheen is going to, like really move forward in the game well and isn't, immediately going to go home after this. So I think you're right in that sense. It's really tough to say. I think you could make an edit argument for basically anybody still left in the game, not named Chrissy and maybe not named Mary. I think you could make an argument that anybody else has some shot at winning. I mean, there were people just this episode who were saying, watch, Cedric's going to win. Calling it now. Cedric's got the winner's edit. He's winning. He's getting things that don't even make sense. Cedric's winning. He's winning. He's winning. But like, no, he wasn't winning. Come on. There's no way. So I think what you said is true about like both Say and Cedric are probably the closest thing that there were to two goats, and they just got eliminated. Which I think really puts this game in a very interesting position because now everyone's a power player, and to some extent, whether it be physical, whether it be social, whether it be, story at the end or whatever else. Like, there's a lot of really interesting things that can happen now.
See, you say under or lower end is Chrissy and Mary, but I'm fully rooting for Mary. I think Mary can pull this off.
I'm rooting for Mary. I don't see her winning. Here's the thing. I really don't like to put too much stock into like the edit and stuff like that because it constantly proves you wrong and things like that. But Mary didn't have a confessional this episode, which is rare for somebody who's as funny as she is, because she was hilarious last episode. But she, other than I guess saying in camp that she thinks that Say's going home, like she was kind of invisible this episode, which I think is weird for somebody who both of her original tribe members went home this episode. Maybe next episode she'll have a big reaction and be like, well, I'm the only one left, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure we'll get that confessional. But yeah.
Let's just stop down that real quick. How amazing is it for Mary to be the first one targeted from your tribe and then just to outlive all of them? Like, just every week, play your shot in the dark, and then you're the last one there. That is the dream level of pettiness I aspire against people who are my ops on my tribe.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Survivor Second Chances in the sense that at the merge, Kelly Wentworth was one of the first people targeted, if not the first person targeted, got all these votes, negated all of them. And by the end, she was at the final four and, was one immunity challenge away from winning the season, essentially. So I don't think it's too different from that. ... That being said, I don't think Mary's gonna, have that amount of win equity. Like I said, I mean, this is thinking way far in advance, but I see Mary as somebody who is going to get to final three and will lose, partially because, she didn't have too much autonomy in her game. But part of that is just because she's only survived due to a 1 in 6 chance. Like Survivor, an important part of it is luck, but it can't be everything. And I think as long as that argument exists, that Mary literally lucked out, then like I think it'll be tough to get people to vote for her, especially when I'm sure the other two people that are there are also going to have good stories or probably going to have better stories. So I'm rooting for Mary. I enjoy her. I don't know.
That's a good point, but just don't count her out. We haven't seen the rest of the merge yet.
I will go on record. I'll go on record right now. And I will say there are two people I'm counting out. I'm counting out Chrissy and I'm counting out Mary. And if I'm wrong, I will do something drastic. But I'm counting them out.
Will you eat a hat?
I do have a lot of hats.
Okay, we'll settle as eating a hat. You can cook it.
Yeah, okay. I'll eat a hat.
You can saute it.
I'll saute it. Yeah. Either way, it's not going to be a big deal. So it's not going to happen. But yeah, I don't feel great about either of them. Anyways, On the purple side, it's kind of interesting because there were a lot of people who are aligned together. To remind about who's on that side, it's David, Mary, Kyle, Camilla, Shaheen, and Cedric. Kyle and Camilla are sort of the nucleus there because Shaheen's working with Kyle and Camilla. David's also working with Kyle and Camilla, but are sort of on two different sides of it. And then there's Mary and Cedric, who are also there. Cedric, I mean, I don't know. I don't know about Cedric. I'm not even going to pretend I know what he's doing in the game. And Mary's just kind of trying to find her way. So to me, it's like they're playing up this idea of like, oh yeah, it could be Shaheen because Shaheen's a threat, which is like valid. But to me, it's like you four are working together. Like there's no reason to rock the boat now, in my personal opinion. Like I would rather do it when everybody's on the beach and you can coordinate more boats. But I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something here that we're not seeing in the editing from Shaheen because obviously, Kyle was like, "Hey, all of a sudden, I kind of want to take out Shaheen."
Yeah.
And Camilla would be down with that. And then also, you hear confessional from David, basically saying like, "Hey, Shaheen's the one who would flip." So it seems like everyone there is suspecting Shaheen of being disloyal to that alliance.
Yeah.
And that this would be a perfect time to take them out. Maybe. Or maybe it was just the editing for the future. Or maybe it was just editing to make it more interesting.
Yeah, that's a super interesting point because you're right. That is something that seems kind of universal. But theoretically, there shouldn't be a reason why people think that because Shaheen hasn't actually done anything disloyal in the game so far. I mean, he was loyal to Thomas. He was, he's been loyal to Joe Neva, still is. Like, I think Shaheen is very obviously a visible strategic threat, probably the most visible strategic threat in the game. But like, it's not for being disloyal. It's just for being a guy with a beard that everyone notices for the most part. You know what I mean? Being a debate professor, etc. Um, I think it's interesting. I mean, I felt like it was smoke from the beginning personally because I don't know, like Cedric and Mary, as I've said, like I don't think they're big threats, but they're also like not working with you. You know what I mean? Like to me, it's like if Kyle and Camilla were to have blindsided Shaheen here, they essentially would have also blindsided Star. They would have blindsided Eva. They would have blindsided Joe. Um, they would have blindsided all these other people on the other side. And would that ruin their games by doing that? By not being open and honest with them because they couldn't be because they just were like, well, we should take the shot before he takes the shot at us. Like I think that ruins a lot of the trust people have with him, with both Kyle and Camilla, if they were to have done that. And I think certainly Camilla and Kyle as well are smart enough to realize that as long as someone's working with you, there's no reason to cut them. You know what I mean? Like you can suspect them being disloyal, but like it's would you rather have the enemy that is working with you or the enemy that is actively not working with you and is going to try to go against you at some point? Like I don't know. It's an interesting question.
That's very true, Joey. I mean, the reaction from the people when they came back and were like, "Hey, what happened to Shaheen here?" They're like, they're gonna be sus. They're gonna be targeted. Yeah. I wonder even talk if like Kyle, Camilla, or David even bring it up. That like Joe and everyone have a problem with it. Next episode, maybe that puts David in the hot water for even like debating sending home Shaheen. Maybe they discuss it more. Maybe it becomes a focal point of this early merge.
It's a good point because I mean like I don't look into the next time on Survivor too much, but it looks like in the next episode, David is going to get like a bit of heat on him for probably trying to force an issue at some point. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that's going to be him being like, well, either going after somebody like who's not strong, but still, important for like the I think he goes after Camilla, actually. I think that's what it says, is that he tries to go after Camilla. But I imagine that like David, just being the person he is going to try to sort of like strong arm the people on his side to do what he wants to have happen. And I could see that being getting rid of Shaheen or getting rid of Camilla and like sort of alienating people that way. But I don't know. I think at worst, that only makes David look kind of stupid. I don't think it makes him look like more dangerous. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, with that, I mean, obviously Kyle will not let that happen. I mean, Kyle's number one is Camilla. So, I mean, I think this powerful, strong alliance is gonna eat itself up,
yeah,
and I'm
I
looking
agree.
forward to that because
For sure.
they're entertaining people to go after each other. We
Here's the
just need an
thing.
inciting event.
They didn't even make it through one vote before they started seriously considering turning on one another. Like I don't know, three of them, David, Kyle, and Camilla, were all like, well, maybe it's best to just get rid of Shaheen right now, even though, this strong person's alliance is supposed to, we'll get to the end together, we'll be strong. So yeah, of course they're gonna turn on each other. And that's how I think somebody like Mary does make it to final three, is like there's no reason to target Mary. Like the reason to target Mary at this stage in the game is like if you're really, really loyal to that alliance and she's like the last one left. She's not really a threat. She's a fun social player to be around. And I'm sure she can probably craft a narrative for herself, but not any better or worse than most of the people still in the game. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
it's a good point. I don't know. I just know you're a Mary hater at the end of the day.
okay, I am a Mary discounter. I am not a Mary hater. I enjoy Mary's presence on the show a lot. I just think she should be eliminated. If it was any season before season 41, Mary would not be in the game right now. She would have been yet another robbed pre-merge queen, and we'd be talking about how she was robbed, but she's still in the game because of a gimmick that didn't exist before the coronavirus. So, I think my argument's valid. I think it's valid for me to be a Mary quote unquote hater. But whatever. I think Mary is in a great position, is what I'm saying. Dot 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 to make it to final tribal council. Not necessarily to win, but
See, the thing I gather from this is, I mean, I think obviously Cedric going over Shaheen here is, I think, way better for the longevity of the season.
Sure.
And for what's going to happen in the upcoming weeks. Because I don't think Cedric would be capable of pulling off the moves that Shaheen is more likely to do.
If Cedric did it, he'd do them accidentally somehow.
I think he had a quote that I wrote down. I forget what he said during, because I wrote it down and said, "I am here." And I wrote, that kind of just like sums up Cedric's gameplay.
He's here.
He's here.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. He's here.
Yeah. So, they also build up, like, it's not just the Strong People Alliance, it's the Honor and Integrity Alliance, as we already talked about. But I don't know, like, the very concept of it, and we talked about this earlier, so I don't really want to talk about it too much again, but like the very concept of it at this point in the game, like it's one thing to come up with this alliance before, the merge or something, but this is something that David's basically making right here at the merge. But he hadn't done the tribal council yet. So like he doesn't really know, he hasn't experienced tribal council yet and hasn't experienced, what it's like. He's just saying, oh yeah, why don't we all just like be honest with each other? Like he doesn't get it. You know what I mean? That's why it's entertaining though, is like the fact that he's like a recruit, right?
Yeah, I think I read. I was going to ask you at some point because I remember seeing before the season. I think there's someone that like there was like one recruit on the season who didn't watch the show, and I think someone online had a problem with that. I'm like, no, recruits are generally okay for the show to have someone who has no idea coming in.
Yeah,
like have a bunch of fans, mainly fans, but having one or two recruits kind of makes the game more interesting and evolves it. Because if everyone's coming in at the same meta that's not a recruit, then, I mean, I think it just gets a little boring.
At this point, we have like two different genres of new era seasons. The ones that have like recruits and people who aren't as familiar with the show, and then the ones that are mostly people who are super fans. Like 45 and 47, from what I can tell, are like mostly super fan seasons. Like most of the people there have watched every season, huge fans of the show. And then 46 and now Survivor 48 are sort of the opposite, where like a lot of these people did not watch much of the show until they got on it. And to me, from my perspective, it's like the 45s and 47s are more strategic seasons. They sort of have the more interesting plays, while 46 and 48 have had interesting plays, but I think they're much more character driven and less gameplay driven. And to me, it's sort of like pick your poison. Which one do you prefer? For me personally, I prefer the strategic 45, 47 seasons, but I know a lot of people are probably the opposite. So, yeah.
No, that's a good point. I didn't exactly think of, number of recruits and, strategy driven. I
Mhm.
just kind of like the concept of potential new plays happening from recruits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if when we play Blown Clock Tower, there's usually a meta set up. Like,
Sure.
you know, we don't really go against the meta most of the time. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
we don't vote
if
out
we
people
do,
at like Final Four or whatever. But if there's a new player playing Blood on the Clock Tower, they might not know that, and they might nominate someone, being like, "Well, I think this person's the demon," without knowing the meta, but therefore creating a new strategy everybody else has to play around. So,
yeah,
yeah,
on its simplest terms, that's basically what I'm saying. You know, we're not going to evolve the show or have new kind of methods if we don't have these recruits ever come in, because
yeah,
then people are just going to keep following the same thing. Maybe, maybe I'm wrong in saying this because more veteran players, can have concepts they've been germinating in their brain for a while, come to fruition. They could like make these insane plays that are entirely new. But
yeah.
I kind of do like this aspect of seeing newer players come up with something.
I think there are two different sides of it. I think there are plays that are being thought of by people who aren't recruits, like the Kyle Camilla play from earlier in the season to get Thomas out of, pretending the entire time like we are not aligned. I've been on the bottom the whole time, and then using the idol. Like that is something that a recruit could not come up with, I don't think. And that's something that makes it good that you're casting super fans. But I think also recruits would never do what David's doing right now, and they would know better, or they would think they know better than to try to create a strong person's alliance. But it creates an interesting game state that everybody else has to play around or play into it to make themselves not look as threatening. I think it's very interesting for that angle of it. But yeah,
Yeah, because as super fans, we probably like, oh, I hate this. Oh, all strong person alliance. But it's
yeah,
something we don't see often that we're like, ooh, let's root for the destruction of this. Like it's like,
mhm.
okay, it kind of provides that anti-hero kind of entertainment.
Yeah. It creates. People will always try to find something to get frustrated at when it comes to whatever the newest Survivor season is, and it always annoys me. I always get frustrated about it. Just enjoy the show, you know what I mean? But like people are frustrated about the concept of like, how dare you put together an honor and integrity alliance? How dare you think you're so much better than these other people? When it's like, I don't know, like this, it makes sense. Like if I had never seen Survivor before and I was on the show, and the only thing I knew is that people lie all the time for seemingly no reason when they could just be honest. Like I understand David's thought process here. I just don't think he gets it. And like, I think that's innocence more than it is duplicity, or I'm saying that word a lot today,
Yeah.
than it is, trying to be, strategic. I think it's just a guy who doesn't know Survivor that well, and I don't think it's much deeper than that.
Yeah, and I think he's just like unnecessarily, increasing that target on himself by showing off with his Captain America-esque antics.
But it's interesting because this is something we see throughout the course of Survivor history. Is like when these super visible players sort of try to create this atmosphere, people who know the show better will play around it and will create an interesting game. Going back to South Pacific, Coach creates this like cult, this religious cult of like we're all working together. And Sophie, the most strategic player there, is like, I'm not religious, but I'm playing into it because this is how I get to the end of the game. You want to talk about another example? Survivor One World. Colton creates this environment of chaos and like I am the god of this tribe. I'm the god of the men's tribe. I say what's going to happen. And he says, well, why don't we just give away our tribal immunity so we can all vote out Bill together? And because Colton is doing this crazy, insane play that no one's ever thought of before, all the strategic people who know the show well are like, well, it makes him a bigger target, so I guess I'll go along with it. And so they keep going along with it. And that's sort of what we're seeing with David here too, is like the strategic players are going along with this. Shaheen's going along with it. Kyle's going along with it. Even Camilla to some extent is going along with it. Because at the end of the day, it has their best interest at heart in that it protects them, as long as they go along with it. So it's interesting to me because this isn't a new idea. We're seeing with David's Honor and Integrity Alliance.
Yeah, and I mean, all these players will fly under the radar, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're flying under the wings of our great savior, Captain America.
Very true. Very true. All right, let's get to the first tribal council of the night, where Chrissy is kind of doing what we were talking about, where she finally decides, you know what, I am also here in this game of Survivor 48, so I'm going to make my presence known by saying honor integrity is a sham and it will never work, and you are stupid for suggesting it. Interesting play.
But not tonight.
Yeah, interesting play. Look, here's the thing. This is Chrissy's first time making her presence known on the season, essentially. But here's the thing: if Chrissy is theoretically going to be targeted for this, I don't think it's going to really impact anything. I don't think Chrissy is actually going to go home because she said this. I think if anything, it makes her maybe less appreciated by the people around her and makes her more likely to be a more traditional GOAT. I don't think David's gonna be like, oh, she's talking bad about honor, get rid of her. I think it's more like, oh, okay, Chrissy, that's all right, we'll leave you be. That's weird of you to say though.
I thought there was a chance that the votes were going to flip onto Chrissy.
Really?
During that whole speech, I was like, I should probably stop talking right now. Like this would be a wild turn of events that just suddenly flipped. But
I'll say this. That's a negative for Chrissy. I don't think people, especially in this honor integrity alliance, are going to want to work with her anymore. I think it only alienates herself from everybody else more. But might get her further in the game by doing that. I don't
know. Okay, and let me bring up key points here that I also had, and we did discuss this earlier. Like, what are your thoughts about Mitchell using this advantage here?
Yeah, the block.
Because I said my thoughts earlier.
I mean, yeah, we sort of touched on this, but I mean, I think it was nothing but a good thing. I think at this point, anything that could make you look. Sorry, I need to speak better. Anything that can make you be seen as a bigger threat is good to get rid of. Like when you hit the merge, you want to be as invisible as possible. You do not want to be seen, especially in the early going when people are trying to get rid of big threats for the first time. So I think Mitch getting rid of that is better than if he had just held on to it, because now the only advantage in the game is Eva's very public idol, which will probably, become more and more of a threatening thing as the days go by. While if Mitch had just held on to his blocker vote, the same would be true of him. But now that he's burned it and in a strategically, sound manner, I think it's fine.
Yeah, we're hearing quite a bit, I think, sometimes little snippets about Eva's idol. So I think, I mean, obviously having any kind of public advantage, no go. That's not good for you.
Yeah.
But also, quickly going back to Chrissy's speech, I mean, Chrissy didn't say anything inherently terrible, but it's saying the quiet parts out loud. Like everyone is has honesty and integrity, but you're always gonna fall from that. You're always gonna go down the wrong path. You could start there, but you're gonna end up lying, cheating, stealing. It's the nature of the game.
Yeah. I mean, she's right. She's correct. I mean, we already talked about that. She's right. But yeah, I did want to mention something about Eva's idol since you brought it up, because a lot of people are sort of discounting Eva and Joe at this point. They don't seem very strategic, but once again, Joe was my original winner pick, so I got to stick by him. So I want to bring this point up. Eva and Joe are not being targeted as much as you would think that they would be at this stage of the game. Like Joe especially is so well insulated with everybody. nobody really wants to target him, and he's like very physical. He did very well in this last challenge, but like David is always going to be viewed as more of a physical threat than Joe is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And Eva herself is like probably, other than David, like the most built person in the game. She is ripped. And like they're both very good in terms of challenges. They both have good social games. They both have good stories if they make the end game. If that's something that matters to these people. But beyond that, they're also well insulated. Like if you want to get Eva out, you have to make sure everybody is aware of that. That's not Star, Shaheen, and Joe. You have to make sure 3 separate people don't hear about it since they're all working with Eva so tightly. And Eva is also not seen as being strategic. Her and Joe are not seen as being strategic. They're not strategic threats like Shaheen or Kai or Camilla are. So I think they're actually in a better position than most people are giving them credit for. I see a path where Eva makes it at least close to the end, and Joe does make it to the end. I see it in front of me. I see. I don't think either of them are getting picked off soon, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I could see a world where they're in the final 3 together, but you know they fall to the eventual winner of the season, Mary.
Well, let's not get crazy. Let's keep it, with predictions that make sense. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll start cooking that hat if I have to. But
you're obsessed with me, Joey. I'll just say you're obsessed with me.
Yeah, no, it's pretty true. Yeah, but anyways, so Mitch uses this vote blocker on Say, and she goes home in an essentially unanimous vote, 5-0. And look, I think this is the right move. I believe you think it's the right move. It just makes sense. Could you imagine Say on the jury? It would be crazy.
The mayor of Ponderosa, like in everyone's ears, just saying all this random stuff, and everybody's like, "Yeah,
If you have Say in the games, still this, and you have to decide week to week, well, do I want to vote her out at this stage? You have to make sure that she has as little pull on the jury as possible. Because if Shane, you voted her out and she knew that you orchestrated it, she would try to poison the entire jury against you. So that's why you would want to drag her to the end, despite her, probably being not someone you want to align with because she's so chaotic. It puts you between a rock and a hard place. So it only makes sense in every world to vote her out here at this stage because Say isn't a threat either. No one is. She's always been a consensus target. Even in the very first tribal council she went to, it was, well, Say's chaotic and she's spreading lies. She's not long for this game. Let's just get rid of her now. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking this thing with Mitch was a little more of a red herring kind of thing, just to fill out the episode. Mitch is a threat here and now, but I just think they were just all kind of thought Say was a pain in the butt.
Yeah,
and you just don't want to keep living with that.
I think that's a huge part of it. I don't know if this is necessarily what people are actually thinking, but I'm sure there's some part of the people's brains that's if I do have to get voted out, would I rather be around Mitch or Say? And the answer is obviously Mitch. Everybody seems to think Mitch is great. People seem, more mixed on Say, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, pretty simple vote, but I'll miss Say in terms of the pure entertainment value.
Also, I think during the live show, we talked about we thought Say would give more of a reaction to being blindsided here.
Yeah.
But I think it was discussed that when Say kind of realized their vote was being blocked, that was the kind of the reaction then, and that kind of negated any kind of reaction during the torch snuffing because Say knew at that point they were going home.
Yeah, I mean, she's got 20 minutes to sit there and contemplate her vote being blocked. I didn't think she was too shocked when all the votes were against her after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of playing the vote blocker in general at that state. But, whatever. The second tribal council is a little more interesting in the
Mhm.
sense that it's not really unanimous. I mean, Cedric votes for Shaheen here, I believe, but everybody else votes for Cedric. Um, and once again, I think this is the right move. Um, I think Cedric is in an interesting spot in the game in the sense that like nobody really like is intimidated by him, but like he's still an agent of chaos. Like I'm sure people know that he flipped on Justin and has been voting each and every way possible and voted out Bianca in sort of a out of nowhere move. So I'm sure people are tangentially aware that he's like sort of been all over the place. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I
What
think Cedric just played a messy game that just never made quite sense. Like none of the moves were the right move. And I
Yeah,
mean, it's easy to say in hindsight. Maybe at the time, could
but it's
be
true. I
a little more
mean,
convincing, but they were
yeah,
just the wrong move after wrong move after wrong move, in my
yeah.
opinion.
I mean,
Uh, but and
yeah,
then like we were discussed with like Shaheen, like what do you tell Joe and Ava after that?
yeah. You have to play up. You have to basically create a story that's not there, and considering that not everybody would be on board anyway, like it seemed like David wasn't even on board to get rid of Shaheen. He was considering it, but he wanted to get rid of Cedric anyways. Like it would just be messy, and it would only make Kyle and Camilla's games look way worse. Um, but yeah, we're in an interesting position in the game now, and we've already sort of talked about it a little bit with Say and Cedric going home because now it's just a kind of a free for all. Like, who knows what's going to happen at this stage? But Shane, I do have one question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think's going home this next episode?
Who do I think is going home this next episode? You know what? I want I want to be wrong.
Okay,
I'm gonna make a bold prediction here.
bold prediction right here.
Kyle.
Wow, Kyle. All right, interesting. Do you have any thoughts of what's going to happen or?
I think there's gonna be some sort of fallout from whatever David does. It's not gonna go directly against David. It's gonna go against someone David is allied with.
Hmm.
And I
Interesting.
think maybe it's too soon for this whole Shaheen Kyle kind of rivalry to happen,
Yeah.
but maybe that's what this is leading to. Maybe it's next episode. And Kyle's my winner pick, so I hope not. But
I like that. That is a bold prediction. My prediction is way more boring in comparison, like significantly more boring. I think Mitch goes. I think Mitch had his big, coming out episode, shall we say, in this episode where we get to learn his backstory and we get to learn why people perceive him as a threat. He got spared last episode because it was Say instead. Mitch is still on the bottom. Mitch still doesn't have any allies, and at the end of the day, if David is going to do this strong people to the end sort of thing, what is a better way to fall back on that than getting rid of a strong person in Mitch, who David is still tangentially aligned with, who nobody really is close to in the game and doesn't want to sit next to the end with. I think Mitch is a perfect sort of consensus quote unquote threat to go in this spot. So it'd be a little boring, but I can see it happening.
I would see that being a very boring option, Joey. How dare you talk
Yeah.
about Mitch in such a way? No, it's really going to weigh down to your opinion that, is Mitch going to be overlooked now? Did Mitch survive the
Yeah.
vote where Mitch would have gone? And is there other inciting factors that are going to pull the attention away from Mitch? I think this next episode can go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it really could go
Yeah.
anywhere. It's true. All right. Were there any other like cool stories from Boston that you can think of?
Oh, this is a lot for the Blended Clock Tower peeps, right? So, I mean, Pam's wonderful. I got to meet Pam for the first time.
Yeah.
Hashtag anti Pam fam. Uh, you know, um, if you have other people and they might have cooler stories, I was pretty drunk during the Tuesday night patron meetup.
Yeah.
But I did go up to Dwight and be like, "Yo, Dwight, have you been drinking so much milk, dog?"
He is pretty ripped. It's true.
I was like, "How'd you get so ripped?" It must have been the milk. I think he was talking to. This is at the after show. He was talking to Caroline from last season at the time. I just went up to Dwight and said that. I was like, I don't know why I did that, but I wasn't even that drunk. Tuesday night, I was wasted. Met up JFK, Jen, Perzo, Ben S, all these people. It was just wonderful meeting all of them, and I was at a table with a bunch of Blended Clock Tower people, and Rob was walking by, and I was like,
"Oh yeah,
Rob, I have closure to the nun story." So then he came back because he was busy, and I got to tell him the closure, and I said, "Yeah, you're right. I did like the nuns texting me, like I didn't want to block them."
Yeah,
but got to tell him closure there. We played a 20-person game at the Hilton where I was an evil gunslinger. It was pretty chaos. Then we played some more Blended Clock Tower at a brewery. I went 3 for 3 that day. Shout out to me.
Yeah.
Evil Gunslinger won. Godfather won. Oracle won on the first day.
Wow. Nice. It's very cool. I'm sure that throughout the rest of the season, and maybe even other stuff that comes afterwards, we'll get plenty of people who were at that Boston live show, and we'll talk to them and ask them more stories. But yeah, Shane,
I will
anything else?
Say that we did play the Survivor Exploding Kittens card game, and
right, yeah,
I was not the first one out. Hey, but albeit to our new sole survivor, our one and only Perzo.
Shouts out to Perzo.
Perzo beat Mara in the final.
It was a fun game, though. It was fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot. Like, I gave voting confessionals. Like, I think Ben D was our Jeff Probst. He was just standing like, what's up, guys? Like, how do you feel about the vote? And then he would go and give voting confessionals around the corner to Ben D as we did our vote. Ben S was the first one eliminated. Praise be.
Praise be.
Praise be. But in terms of anything other cool things happening, it's like weird because at these events, I'm a very introverted person, so like I don't want to go up and randomly just start talking to these strangers who are just real people with their real lives. I mean, we're a lot of event,
people who go to these live shows are like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the person with their stories, but I'll say to the community this time that I did not get drunk and go around asking survivors to play Blended Clock Tower at the bar all night. I only got drunk, went around the bar, asked patrons to play Blended Clock Tower.
I mean, if that's not something to be proud of, what else is there to be proud of? All right. Any final thoughts, or are you good?
No, I'm a huge fan of this season so far. I'm always more of the vibes guy. I love strategy. But I also like strategy mixed with vibes. Because what is strategy if there's no fun to it?
Exactly.
I know you're a purveyor of strategy and fun, Joey. You're the epitome of that kind of meeting.
Thank you, Shane. I would say the same thing about you.
Don't.
Okay, I won't. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and so long. Farewell.
Bye.